I found a video on my phone I don't remember being in. At first, I thought it was just an old clip from a trip or some forgotten moment. It was stored deep in my cloud archive, no title, no context, just a blurry thumbnail. I tapped it without thinking. What I saw made my hands go cold. I was in the video, lying on our bed, still, unmoving. My wife was in the room. She wasn't alone. There was a man beside her. He wasn't touching her, but they were close. Too close. She was smiling, laughing, even. The kind of laugh I hadn't seen from her in years. She looked alive, and not in the way she looked around me. I kept staring, not sure what I was looking at. The bedroom was ours. I recognized the pattern on the sheets. My slippers on the floor. Her scarf draped over the chair in the corner. I saw myself, just lying there completely unaware. My eyes were closed. I wasn't reacting to anything happening around me. Not moving, not speaking. Just there. Then she said something. She said my name. And then she looked at the man beside her and said, "Told you." Nothing. He laughed. Quietly. Like it was some inside joke I wasn't part of. That's when I paused it. I couldn't take another second. I just sat there on the edge of the tub, phone in my hand, staring at the wall. Everything in me went still. I felt like I was watching a scene from someone else's life. But it was mine. That was me. And I had no memory of any of it. I started questioning everything. Was I asleep? Was it late at night? Was this taken without me knowing? Why couldn't I remember something so disturbing? And more importantly, what exactly was happening when the camera wasn't recording? Ellie came home a few hours later. I heard the door, her keys hitting the counter, the familiar sound of her coat sliding off. She called out something casual, maybe, "Hey babe," or dinner. I don't even remember. I didn't answer. I just sat there in silence, heart pounding, trying not to look like a man who had just had the ground ripped out from under him. She peeked her head into the bathroom and smiled. "You okay?" I nodded. She didn't press. Later that night, she laughed at a show on TV like everything was normal, like nothing had changed. I watched her out of the corner of my eye, trying to figure out how someone could live so comfortably in a lie. I didn't say anything, not because I was afraid of what she'd say, but because I didn't know what I'd say. The next morning, I opened her calendar. Nothing unusual, just normal events, normal names. Then I checked her email, then her travel folder, then the synced messages she didn't know were still backing up. That's when I started seeing the pieces. A dinner date that didn't match her story. A flight confirmation with a different hotel than the one she said she stayed at. A message to someone saved as J that read, "He has no idea. It's almost too easy." That was 2 days ago. I haven't confronted her yet. I'm not ready. Not until I understand the full scope of what I'm looking at. Because what I saw in that video, what I heard in her voice, wasn't guilt. It was control. Like she was proud of what she was doing. Like I was never supposed to find out. But I did. And now I need the rest of the story. I didn't go to work the next day. I told my boss I wasn't feeling well. Which wasn't a lie. I wasn't. Not in any way that could be diagnosed, at least. My body was moving, sure. But my mind felt like it had stepped off the curb into traffic and hadn't landed yet. I sat at my desk in silence, staring at her laptop. I'd never gone through her things before. Not in 8 years. Not once. But that morning, I opened her MacBook and started looking. Not because I wanted to catch her. I already had. But because I needed to understand what kind of story I'd been living in without realizing it. There wasn't much at first. She was smart. Careful. The browser history was clean. Emails were mostly professional. No obvious names, no romantic messages. Nothing that screamed cheating. But the trash folder told a different story. There were deleted screenshots. Calendar exports. A scanned hotel receipt from a place I didn't recognize. And then, at the very bottom of the trash folder, something that made my fingers go numb. A selfie. Not of her. Of a man. Sitting in what looked like a hotel room. Shirt half-buttoned. Smirking at the camera. I recognized the wallpaper. It was the same background from the video. I stared at his face for a long time. He looked familiar, but I couldn't place him at first. One of those faces you feel like you've seen before, maybe in a waiting room, or standing in line behind you at a coffee shop. I opened a second tab and started searching. It didn't take long. LinkedIn. That's where I'd seen him. He had been a guest speaker at one of Ellie's company workshops. Last year. She had mentioned him. Said he gave a talk about branding and psychology. Told me he was intense but brilliant. I remember teasing her at the time, brilliant's a strong word for a guy with hair gel and white loafers. She'd laughed. Now I wondered what that laugh had really meant. His name was Josh Kendrick. He ran some boutique consulting firm out of Seattle. His profile was clean. Too clean. Not a single personal photo. Just work, work, work. Polished, curated. Like a menu without prices. I checked our shared calendar from last year. She had an event-marked strategy retreat on the same weekend he'd spoken. The note said, "Don't forget to pack the blazer. Dress code strict." I remember that weekend clearly. She came back with a tan and a sudden interest in red wine. I remember her saying it was exhausting but productive. She didn't mention Josh. Not once. Not by name. And now I couldn't unsee his face next to hers in my head. I clicked through more deleted files. There were receipts for ride shares. Restaurant reservations. All in cities she wasn't supposed to be in. A few photos of hotel room numbers. Room keys. Mirror selfies that didn't show her face, but I knew her hand. I knew her phone case. I knew her watch. One note caught my eye. It was titled packing_list.pdf. It was short. Just 6 items. Black dress. Wine. Charger. Room scent. Heels. The usual. I didn't know what the usual meant. And suddenly, I hated that I didn't know. I sat back and felt my throat tighten. Not because of the evidence. I'd already passed that stage. It was something else now. Something worse. This had layers. Plans. Repetition. This wasn't a mistake. It was a routine. Ellie wasn't sneaking around. She wasn't wrestling with guilt. She was organized. That was when I realized something else. Something quieter. More dangerous. She never really tried to hide it. Not well, anyway. Maybe she thought I'd never look. Maybe she knew I trusted her too much. Maybe that was the game. Because the man she married would never check her calendar. Never guess her passwords. Never imagine that the woman beside him at breakfast had another life in a hotel room 2 states away. I wasn't just being lied to. I was being underestimated. And I couldn't stop wondering how long she'd been playing me for a fool. That night, I sat at the dinner table with her. She told me about her day. Some nonsense about a new client and how her team couldn't get their pitch straight. She complained about traffic. Said we should do a weekend away soon, just the 2 of us. I nodded. Smiled, even. But I was watching her differently now. The way she held her fork. The way her eyes darted when she spoke. The way she laughed, too loudly, too easily. And for the first time, I didn't feel hurt. I felt curious. Because if this was a game, I wanted to see how far she thought she could take it. I wasn't going to yell. I wasn't going to beg. I wasn't going to fall apart. I was going to learn everything. And when the time was right, she'd be the one sitting in silence, wondering who I really was. I started small. She left her purse on the kitchen counter that Friday morning. Normally, she'd grab it on the way out without even thinking. But that day, she got a call right before she walked out the door, something about her team missing a deadline, and she forgot it. I waited 10 minutes after she left. Listened for the garage door closing. Let the house settle into silence. Then I walked to the counter, unzipped the main compartment, and started looking. Not like a thief. Not like a jealous husband. Like an investigator. There was a lipstick I didn't recognize. Keys. A packet of gum. Her work badge. A receipt folded twice and tucked into the side pocket. And then, at the very bottom, something small and plastic. A hotel room key card. I turned it over in my hand. Embossed at the top, Willow Crest Hotel, Boise. Boise. She'd never mentioned Boise. I opened her travel calendar. Searched her inbox. Nothing. That city didn't appear anywhere. No flight confirmation. No meeting invite. No booking under her name. I looked up the hotel online. Mid-range. Clean. Business class. A place you'd pick if you didn't want to be noticed. I called them. Told them I'd found a room key and was trying to return it. Do you have a name or a room number? The woman asked. I gave her Ellie's name. She typed something. Yes, I see a past stay. 3 weeks ago. Checked in Friday night, checked out Sunday morning. I paused. Was the reservation under her name? No, it was under a Mr. Kendrick. But she was listed as a secondary guest. There it was. No denying it now. I thanked the woman and hung up. My hands were steady. Too steady. Like my body hadn't caught up to what I just heard. Like the truth was happening in another room, and I was just listening through the wall. I didn't cry. I didn't shake. I just stood there, staring at the key card. 3 weeks ago, she told me she had an all-women's team retreat in Ashland. Even sent a selfie from the hotel lobby with her co-workers in the background. But that picture, now I remembered, it was blurry. Zoomed in. almost like a photo of a screen. Had she faked it? I went back to my laptop, opened our shared photo archive, scrolled to the day she left. Only one photo, just the one she sent me. But when I clicked details, it didn't show her location as Ashland. It showed Boise. I sat back, closed the laptop, and stared at the wall again. Same wall, same silence, different kind of ache this time. It's one thing to be lied to. It's another thing to see the architecture of a lie. The planning, the layering, the sheer confidence. I started to wonder if she got something out of hiding it. If secrecy itself was part of the thrill. That night, I said nothing. She came home late, told me her coworker Megan was having a breakdown, and she stayed behind to help. I nodded, asked if she needed anything. She smiled and said, "Just you." I wanted to laugh, not because it was funny, but because it felt surreal. Hearing that line from the same mouth that had whispered to another man in a hotel room in Boise. She kissed my forehead like I was her anchor, her safety net. And maybe that's what I'd been all along, something soft to land on. But I was done being soft. I started changing things. Little things. I moved a photo from the bookshelf to the drawer. Took down the framed anniversary trip print from the hallway. She didn't notice. Or maybe she did and didn't say anything. I changed the password on our shared Netflix account. She texted me asking why it wasn't working. I said I must have updated it during a system update. She believed me. I signed up for a new credit card in my name only. Opened a second checking account. Quietly, slowly, step by step. Not out of revenge. Out of survival. If everything in my life had been based on an illusion, I needed something real. Even if it was just a bank account and a password. The more I learned, the less I felt like breaking down. I wasn't broken. I was waking up. And what I saw when I opened my eyes wasn't just betrayal. It was a stranger standing in the body of someone I used to trust. It started with her perfume. She'd worn the same scent for years, something floral and clean, the kind that lingers on a sweater long after she's left the room. I could smell it on the stairs, in the car, even on our dog's fur. It used to make me feel like she was close, even when she wasn't. But one morning, it was different. Not stronger, not weaker, just not hers. I didn't say anything. I just stood behind her while she sipped her coffee, eyes half open, scrolling her phone, and I realized I didn't recognize her anymore. Not even by scent. That's when it really hit me. She was already gone. She just hadn't packed her things yet. I started taking notes. Actual notes. In a small black notebook I bought from a gas station convenience rack. I kept it in my car, tucked in the door pocket under a fast food napkin. Names. Dates. Phrases she used. Back-to-back meetings. Late client call. Should be home by 9. Don't wait up. I wasn't looking for evidence anymore. I already had more than enough. What I needed now was clarity. Context. The blueprint of her story. Because this wasn't a crack in the foundation. This was a whole second house built behind the one I thought we lived in. I went back to Josh Kendrick's profile. Clicked deeper. I found a podcast interview he did 6 months ago. One of those self-help meets entrepreneurship shows. He talked about strategy, disruption, personal power. All buzzwords. But at the end of the episode, the host asked him to name someone who inspired him. He paused, then said, "There's someone in my life who reminds me that confidence isn't always loud. Sometimes it's quiet. Sometimes it's the kind of confidence that makes you forget you ever had doubt." It sounded like a compliment, but it felt like a clue. The host didn't ask who he meant, and he didn't offer a name. But I knew. I knew exactly who he meant. I sat in the garage after that, in the driver's seat. Keys in the ignition, car not running. The notebook in my lap. I stared at a blank page for a long time before writing one word. Control. That's what this was about. Not love. Not lust. Not even the thrill of a secret. Control. She controlled the way I saw her. The way others saw us. She edited reality, curated it, selected only the angles she wanted visible. The perfect marriage. The brilliant wife. The trusting husband. And I played my part. That night, I made dinner. Pasta, garlic bread, her favorite salad. I set the table, lit a candle, turned on the little speaker she liked by the window. When she walked in, her eyes lit up. "Well, this is a surprise." I smiled. "You said you had a tough week. Thought you could use a reset." She kissed my cheek. Told me I was sweet. Told me I was one of the good ones. And I just smiled again. I was playing my role, but I was also watching. Every word, every glance, every pause between sentences. Midway through dinner, I asked her what she thought about trust. Just like that. Casual. Like it came from nowhere. She blinked. Trust? Yeah. What do you think it means, really? She laughed. Took a sip of wine. Deep question for a Thursday. I nodded. Waited. She said, I think trust is when you don't have to ask the question. You just know. You believe in someone, even when you can't see everything. Like faith. Blind faith. She shrugged. Isn't all trust a little blind? I didn't answer. I just tucked that line into the notebook in my head. The next day, I booked a room at the same hotel in Boise. One night only. No bags. No check-in under my name. I just wanted to see it. Room 214. That's the number that showed up in one of her deleted photos. I walked the hall slowly. It smelled like carpet cleaner and lemon. The kind of place where no one asks questions as long as the credit card clears. I stood outside the room for a full minute. Just breathing. Imagining her on the other side of the door, laughing. Whispering. Saying my name like it was nothing. Like I was nothing. Then I turned around and walked out. I didn't need to see the room. I'd already seen enough. When I got home, I found her in the kitchen, wearing one of my old hoodies. She smiled when she saw me. I was thinking, she said, we should do a cabin weekend. Get away from everything. My heart was steady. My voice calm. Sure, I said. That sounds nice. And in my head, I was already packing. But not for the trip she was planning. For the one she didn't see coming. I didn't expect to hear from her. Not her. Her name was Melissa. She emailed me late on a Monday night from an account I didn't recognize. No subject line. Just my name in the first line of the message. Daniel, I think we need to talk. There was an attachment. Just one. A photo. I almost didn't open it. I thought it might be spam. A scam. Or worse, something connected to what I'd been uncovering. But something about the tone stopped me. It didn't feel random. It felt like someone who already knew too much. The photo was of Josh Kendrick, standing outside a house I didn't recognize. And next to him, a little girl, maybe 5 years old, clutching his hand. My chest tightened. Not because of what I saw, but because of what I didn't. I scrolled back up and reread the email. The second line said, he's not just your problem. I stared at the screen for a long time. Then I wrote back 2 words. When and where? She replied within minutes. Tomorrow. Noon. Public place. We met at a park downtown. The kind with too many pigeons and half-broken benches. She sat near the fountain wearing sunglasses and a faded sweatshirt. She looked tired. Not physically, tired in the soul. The kind of exhaustion you can't sleep off. I introduced myself. She nodded. Said, I'm not here to make this worse. I didn't know what to say, so I just sat down next to her. She pulled out her phone. Swiped to a folder. Showed me more photos. Josh. Her daughter. Airport gates. Hotel receipts. Then one that made my throat go dry. Ellie. Not blurry. Not hidden. Clear. She was standing next to Josh, suitcase in hand, leaning into him, like it was the most natural thing in the world. Melissa looked at me. They've been doing this for over a year. I didn't ask how she knew. I just nodded. I found out 6 months ago, she said. Tried to confront him. He denied it. Said it was work-related. Strategy planning. Said I was insecure. Crazy. I looked at her. Did you believe him? For about a week. She smirked, but it wasn't a happy one. Then I started paying attention. She told me everything. How they met at a conference. How it escalated. How Ellie visited Seattle more than I realized. How their workshops were more than slideshows. They use each other, she said. Feed each other's egos. Josh loves feeling admired. Ellie loves being in control. The wind picked up, scattering a few leaves across the pavement. Neither of us moved. I didn't know who else to talk to, she added. But when I saw your name in one of their shared documents, I figured maybe you weren't in on it. Shared documents. I blinked. Wait, what kind of documents? She handed me a printout. A list. Names. Locations. Dates. And next to some of them, phrases. Descriptions. Codes. Under my name. Quiet. Predictable. Easy to steer. I didn't speak. I couldn't. I just stared at those words. Not written by a stranger. Written by the woman I loved. The woman I had built a life around. Melissa touched my arm gently. You didn't deserve this. Neither did she. We sat in silence for a while, watching people pass by. Parents with strollers. Teens with earbuds. The regular world, spinning along, completely unaware that 2 lives had been quietly dismantled on a park bench that afternoon. Eventually she stood. Said she had to pick up her daughter. Before she left, she turned to me and said, "You have every right to fall apart. But if you ever want to do something with all of this, I'm in." And then she was gone. I drove home in silence. No music. No calls. Just the sound of the road under the wheels and my own thoughts screaming in the quiet. I put the printout on the kitchen table. I stared at it for a long time. Quiet. Predictable. Easy to steer. Maybe once. But not anymore. I didn't sleep that night. Not because I was angry. Not even because I was sad. It was something else. A feeling I couldn't name. Like I'd crossed an invisible line and couldn't go back. Like the version of me that existed before Melissa handed me that paper no longer fit in my own skin. I sat in the dark at the dining room table, that list of names in front of me, and I started writing. Not a revenge plan. Not a letter to Ellie. Something else. I opened my laptop, clicked into a blank document, and just started typing. At first, it was messy, frantic, out of order. But the more I wrote, the clearer it got. The whole story. The hotel. The video. The emails. The lies. The quiet things. The look in her eyes when she said she loved me with the same mouth that had already betrayed me. I wasn't writing to anyone in particular, but I needed to get it out. Every word. Every moment. Every time I'd ignored the signs because I didn't want to see them. I wrote for hours. When the sun came up, I was still sitting there. Same spot. Same chair. But something in me had shifted. I wasn't waiting anymore. I wasn't frozen. I wasn't asking why. I knew why. Because she could. Because I let her. That's a hard thing to admit. It's easier to point a finger. To say, look what she did to me. But the truth was, I handed her the benefit of the doubt 1,000 times. I silenced my own gut. I swallowed my instincts. I chose peace over truth. And she used that silence like a doorway. Later that morning, I drove to my brother's house. He didn't know anything yet. I hadn't told him. We aren't the kind of family that talks about feelings over coffee. But he opened the door, saw my face, and didn't say a word. Just nodded and stepped aside. I showed him the video. He watched it once. No questions. No reactions. Just that slow, heavy stillness I recognized too well. After it ended, he looked at me and said, "What do you want to do?" That was the first time someone asked me that. Not what I felt. Not how I was holding up. What I wanted. I didn't answer right away. Because I didn't know. I didn't want revenge. That felt cheap. Temporary. I didn't want to destroy her, either. I just didn't want to be invisible anymore. I didn't want to be the quiet guy in someone else's twisted story. So I went home. I reread what I had written that night. All of it. Then I copied the file into a clean document. Removed names. Removed locations. Just kept the truth. Stripped and raw. And I uploaded it. Anonymously. No headline. No context. Just a story. A man realizing, piece by piece, that the woman he built his life around was building something else, behind his back, and without his permission. I didn't expect anything to happen. I wasn't trying to make it viral. I just needed it out of me. But within a few hours, the comments started. First one. I felt every word of this. I'm so sorry. Then, this happened to me. Almost the same way. And then, please post more. Tell us what happens next. The messages flooded in. Not likes. Not followers. Just people. Hurting people. Real people. Some who had been betrayed. Some who had been the betrayers. People who said they'd never told anyone. People who finally felt less alone. I sat back in my chair and stared at the screen. I hadn't expected this, but I understood it. Because sometimes the worst part of being betrayed isn't the betrayal. It's the silence afterward. The part where you're sitting in the ruins, and no one even knows the building has collapsed. And now someone knew. A lot of someone's. I didn't reply to any of them. Not yet. But I kept writing. For the first time in weeks, I wasn't unraveling. I was building something. And I wasn't doing it for her. I was doing it for me. She noticed. Not everything. Not yet. But enough to shift the air between us. It started with the way I spoke to her. I wasn't colder, just different. Calmer. Measured. I stopped asking questions. Stopped filling silence. Stopped trying to keep the peace. I think that confused her more than anything. Because for years, I was the one who smoothed things over. The one who leaned in. The one who asked, "What's wrong?" Even when I already knew. Now I was quiet. Present. Watching. And she didn't know what to do with that. One night, after dinner, we were sitting on the couch. The TV was on, playing some mindless series she liked. I wasn't watching. I hadn't been watching for weeks. She looked over and said, "You've been different lately." I turned my head slowly. "How so?" "I don't know," she said. Distant? Is something going on at work? I almost laughed. Work? That's what she thought this was about. I shook my head. No, work's fine. She hesitated, waited for me to say more. When I didn't, she went quiet. That was the first crack. A few days later, she made an effort. Came home early, cooked dinner, played the playlist we used to listen to on road trips. Asked if I wanted to go out that weekend, just the two of us. I agreed. Not because I wanted to, but because I needed to know how far she'd go to maintain the illusion. We went to a quiet restaurant we used to love. She ordered wine, told stories, laughed a little too hard, kept reaching for my hand across the table. I let her believe, for just a little longer, that I was still the man she used to steer. Halfway through the meal, she said something strange. You've always been so easy to be with. You don't demand too much. You're just safe. I looked at her for a long time. Then I asked, what do you think I would do if I stopped being safe? She blinked, smiled, confused. What do you mean? If I changed? If I started asking different questions? Making different choices? Would that scare you? There was a long pause. She set down her glass. Where is this coming from? I shrugged. Just a thought. She looked uneasy. Not afraid. Not guilty. Just unsure. And for Ellie, unsure was rare. When we got home, she said she was tired. Went to bed early. I stayed up, scrolling through comments on my anonymous posts. The latest one had over 200 replies. People sharing their stories, asking for updates, calling the story raw, haunting, real. One message stood out. It said, "Your silence has weight. She feels it now. Don't stop." I closed my laptop and sat there in the dark. The same room, the same house, the same furniture, but it all felt different now. Like I was on the other side of the glass, finally watching things clearly. The next morning, she made coffee before I woke up. I found a note on the counter. Didn't want to wake you. Hope today is lighter. Love you. It was in her handwriting. The same loops and curves I used to trace with my finger. But now it looked like a message written to someone she wasn't sure she still knew. Later that day, I met Melissa again. This time in a different spot. A bookstore cafe. Neutral ground. She brought a folder. Neatly organized. She had found more documents, appointments, calendar invites shared between Ellie and Josh under a separate account. Private email domain. Not tied to their work at all. I flipped through pages. Flights. Dinner reservations. A receipt from a hotel gift shop. Ellie had bought a tie. Not for me. Melissa watched me read in silence. Then she asked, "Have you thought about what you want to do?" I nodded slowly. "Yeah. What is it?" I want her to feel what I felt. Melissa's face changed. Not surprised. Just sad. She said, "You might never get that. She's not built the way you are." I looked at her. Maybe not. But she'll know I'm no longer the man she wrote about in that file. Melissa didn't ask what I meant. She just said, "Good." Before we parted ways, she reached into her bag and handed me something. A small flash drive. "I made a copy," she said, "of everything." I took it. Didn't look at it right away. Just held it in my hand, feeling the weight of it, small, but heavy in all the ways that mattered. That night, I left it on my nightstand. Ellie was brushing her teeth when she saw it. She picked it up. "What's this?" I shrugged. "Something from work." She paused, studied it, then placed it back down. But for the first time, she looked nervous. And for the first time, I didn't. She started watching me more closely after that. Not obviously. Not like someone who's suspicious. More like someone who can't tell if something is slipping through their fingers or if they're just imagining it. Her questions got softer, but more frequent. "What time will you be home? Where were you this morning? Are you okay?" I answered every one of them calmly, truthfully. I didn't lie. I didn't need to. The truth was heavy enough. I think it scared her more than lies would have. The flash drive stayed on the nightstand for 3 days. She didn't touch it again. Or maybe she did, when I wasn't around. I half hoped she had. I wanted her to wonder. To ask herself how much I knew. By the end of that week, I was ready. Not to confront her. To interrupt her story. Friday morning, I printed something. A single page. It had a timeline. Dates. Times. Places. 2 names, hers and Josh Kendrick's. No explanations. No accusations. Just the facts. Clean. Documented. Sharp as a blade. I folded the page in half, slipped it into an envelope, and tucked it into her work bag while she was upstairs blow-drying her hair. I made us both coffee. Said good morning. Kissed her cheek. Watched her leave. Then I waited. 2 hours later, she called. I let it ring. Then she texted. Can we talk? Then, please call me. Then nothing for 20 minutes. I imagined her in some conference room, opening her bag, pulling out her laptop, reaching for her charger, and then finding it. That envelope, that page, that evidence she never thought I could collect, let alone deliver in silence. No confrontation, no shouting match, just the truth, dropped like a pin in the middle of her curated world. When I finally picked up the phone, she didn't say hello. She said, "What is this?" I waited. "Daniel, what is this? You tell me," I said. There was a long pause, the kind where you can hear someone blinking. Then, "How long have you known?" I said, "Long enough." "Why didn't you say anything?" "Because you weren't listening." Silence. Then, "Can we talk about this in person?" I said, "We are." She tried to shift. "It's not what you think. It's—" "No," I cut in. "It's exactly what I think." Her voice dropped. "Softer now. What do you want me to say?" I looked out the window. Cars passing. People walking dogs. The normal world still moving. "Nothing," I said. "I just wanted you to know that I know. That's all." Another pause. Then, "What happens now?" I didn't answer right away. Because honestly, I didn't know. This wasn't revenge. It wasn't some masterstroke. It was a reminder. A reminder that I was no longer quiet. No longer predictable. No longer hers to steer. That night, she came home early. Said we needed to talk. I let her. She stood in the kitchen with her arms crossed. Defensive already. "I made a mistake," she said. "I've been confused." "About what?" She blinked. "About a lot of things. About us." I said nothing. Just waited. She started pacing. "You've changed. You don't talk to me. You don't look at me the same way." I looked at her. "You noticed that, huh?" "I didn't mean to hurt you." That sentence. That tired, hollow sentence. I almost laughed. "Instead," I said, "you didn't hurt me. You ended something. There's a difference." She opened her mouth, but nothing came out. "I read what you wrote." I added. "About me. About being predictable. Safe. Easy to steer." Her face went pale. I kept going. "You had a man who gave you trust, and you called it weakness. You had loyalty, and you called it convenience. You had peace, and you were bored." She tried to speak again, but I wasn't finished. "I'm not here to punish you, Ellie. That's not my job. I'm just here to stop being what you decided I was." There was nothing left to say. She cried. Of course she cried. But I didn't comfort her. Not because I wanted her to suffer, but because I couldn't lie with my body anymore, not even through a hug. She went upstairs without saying a word, and I sat at the kitchen table with my hands flat against the wood, breathing like I hadn't in weeks. That night, I didn't sleep on the couch. I slept in our bed. She didn't. And for the first time in a long time, I dreamed of a life that didn't include her at all. The house was quiet in a way I hadn't heard before. Not silent, just empty. Ellie was gone most of that week. Said she needed space, time to process. I didn't argue. I didn't ask where she was going. I didn't care. The truth is, I needed the same thing. At first, I thought it would be hard. I braced myself for some crash, some emotional collapse. But it never came. Instead, I exhaled. It felt like I'd been holding my breath for months, maybe years, and now I was finally letting go. The air didn't taste like revenge. It tasted like clarity. I cleaned the garage. I donated clothes I hadn't worn in years. I opened windows. I rearranged furniture, not to erase her, but to make space for someone I'd forgotten. Myself. It's strange how you can live in the same house, in the same body, and suddenly feel like both are unfamiliar. Like you're stepping into your own life for the first time with eyes that finally work. I spent one evening rereading the letters I had written in the early weeks. The private ones, never posted, never shared. They weren't angry. They were raw, honest, desperate. A version of me trying to make sense of a world that didn't match the one he thought he was living in. I cried for him, but not because I still was him. Because I wasn't. A few days later, I got an email from someone named Rachel. She worked for a podcast that focused on real-life stories. People who had lived through infidelity, betrayal, loss, and rebuilt something from the ashes. She'd read my anonymous posts. Said they hit her in the chest. She asked if I'd be willing to share my voice. Not just my words. I didn't answer right away. I closed the laptop. Went for a walk. Listened to the wind in the trees, the sound of a sprinkler ticking in someone's yard, the kind of quiet that tells you your mind is settling. When I got back, I replied, yes, but not for attention. For truth. That same night, Ellie returned. She came in quietly. No suitcase. Just a purse and a worn expression. She stood in the doorway for a long time like she wasn't sure if she still belonged here. Maybe she didn't. I was sitting at the dining table, flipping through a notebook. She walked in, didn't say anything right away. Then, softly, "Do you still love me?" The question felt like it came from a stranger. I didn't answer. She sat across from me. Her eyes were red, like she hadn't been sleeping. She looked smaller somehow. Not physically, just dimmer. "I didn't expect this from you," she said. "You were always so quiet, so forgiving." I met her eyes. "Maybe that's why you thought I wouldn't wake up." She flinched at that, just slightly. "I don't know who I've become," she said. "I keep trying to trace it back, to figure out when I stopped being good. I keep hoping there's a clean line I can cross back over." "There isn't," I said. "That's the thing. It's not a line. It's a drift. You stop noticing who you are. Then one day, you look around and realize you've betrayed every version of yourself that once made you proud." She wiped her face with her sleeve. "I don't expect you to forgive me," she said. I wanted to say it, out loud, that I ruined something that didn't deserve to be ruined." I nodded. That was all I could give her. She looked around the room. It was different now. Freer. She noticed. "This doesn't feel like my home anymore," she said quietly. "It's not," I answered. We sat for a while in that strange stillness, two people who had loved each other once, who had built something real, only to burn it from opposite ends. Before she left that night, she turned and said, "You know, I thought I'd always have the upper hand. But you didn't fight. You just became something I couldn't control." And with that, she walked out. The next morning, I recorded the interview. I didn't read a script. I didn't dramatize it. I just told the truth. Not about her, not about him, but about me. About what it means to lose something you thought was yours forever and realize it never really was. After the recording, the producer said, "That didn't sound like a story of betrayal. It sounded like someone coming back to life." I smiled for the first time in days. "Maybe that's all betrayal is," I said. "A breaking open. And if you're lucky, something good grows in the cracks." 6 months. That's how long it's been since she left for the last time. There was no final fight. No grand speech. No teary plea at the door. Just a short note on the counter and the sound of her car pulling away. She moved in with a friend, or maybe a relative. I never asked. The last message I got from her was about forwarding her mail. I told her I'd leave it in a box on the porch. She never replied. And honestly, I was okay with that. I still live in the same house. But it doesn't feel the same. I painted the walls. I got rid of the wedding photos. I sold the bed. Not to erase her. To reclaim the space. The funny thing is, healing didn't happen the way I thought it would. There was no aha moment. No single day I woke up and felt brand new. It was slow. Uneven. Some days I felt strong. Others I sat in the car after grocery shopping and stared at the steering wheel for 20 minutes, trying to remember how to move forward. But then one day I caught myself humming while making coffee. Just humming. And I realized I hadn't done that in years. That's how healing comes. Not like thunder. Like breath. The podcast episode went viral. Not millions of views, but enough. Enough for people to reach out. To say thank you. To say you said what I couldn't. A small publisher emailed me a month later. Said they wanted to compile stories like mine, raw, real, unscripted. I said yes. Not because I wanted to be an author, but because I realized I had more to say. Writing became part of my life. Not the anonymous posts anymore. Just journals. Thoughts. Pieces of memory. I started going to small gatherings, local talks. I shared my story once to a room of 12 people, and one woman came up afterward, in tears, and said, "I didn't think men ever said this stuff out loud." That moment stayed with me. One day, I ran into Melissa again. At a bookstore, of all places. We hugged. Just that. No spark. No romantic subplot. Just two people who had been in the same storm, waving at each other from different sides of the wreckage. She looked healthier. Lighter. Said she was starting a new job. Moving cities. "I'm proud of you," she said. "You too." And that was it. We didn't need more than that. I still think about Ellie sometimes. Not with anger. Not even with longing. With distance. With a kind of quiet gratitude. Because if she hadn't broken me open, I never would have realized how much of myself I had let disappear just to keep her comfortable. I had been folding myself into smaller and smaller spaces. Until there was barely anything left. She didn't ruin my life. She revealed it. And once I saw it clearly, I couldn't unsee it. Last week, I stood in front of a group of college students, young, idealistic, hopeful, and I told them about trust. About silence. about learning how to hear your own voice when it's been quiet for too long. One of them asked, "Would you ever take her back?" I smiled. "No, but I hope she finds peace. And I hope I never forget what it cost me to find my own." After they left, I stayed in the room a while longer, just sitting. The sun was coming through the windows in long, warm lines. And I realized something. I wasn't waiting anymore. Not for answers. Not for closure. Not even for someone new. I wasn't lost. I was just here. Present. Whole. Finally.